would eat poison? How many of you guys would go to Los Amigos and say, I know I don't see it on the menu, but do you have any rat poison that I could have this morning? Or you've asked for it maybe instead of Parmesan cheese on your pizza at Vito and Sons. You know, let's just sprinkle this up here. You know, it's not something we would do. I've titled this morning, Danger, Poison. And I'm going to look at 5 things that we need to look at that's creating poison in our lives. We could spend all morning talking about the ways that we poison ourselves. And a lot of you guys are probably thinking about it right now. So, oh, Lord, he's going to get on me about this or he's going to get on me about that. You know, about what I eat or what I drink or you know, what I inhale. You know, and that's not what I'm going to do this morning. You know, I mean, I could. And, you know, I think about some of the ladies I work with. They found out that I have diabetes. And they say, how do you manage to keep your sugar so under control when you're not taking medicine? And they come in every morning and they have a Mountain Dew and a honey bun for breakfast. and still they don't get it. But no, that's a topic for another day. I'm not going there. I'm going to talk about spiritual poisons. And there are many. There are many, but I want to focus on 5 of them. These 5 poisons will bind you in chains, restricting your freedom to worship and to fully serve God. But there's good news. We know a chain breaker. We done sang about it this morning. We done sang about it. So we're going to jump right in. The first one I want to talk about is an unforgiving spirit. You ever had an issue with somebody and years later you thought it was over, but somebody said that person's name and you just kind of cringe and you realize maybe there's something still there? My wife had that situation a few years ago. She had a run-in with someone and it was kind of behind us, but then years later we're riding down the road and I mentioned the person's name. No, I'm not going to do it today, y'all. Just. But she had a reaction. And I said to her, I said, you're still holding on to that. You're still holding a grudge from that situation. You haven't fully forgiven. And she realized it. And she prayed about it. And now she and this person get along great because she let go. Unforgiveness is like an untreated wound. It will fester inside of you, eating away at your joy. According to Johns Hopkins Medicine, they're smarter than I am, forgiveness has a huge impact on your health. They say that forgiving others can lower the risk of heart disease, improve cholesterol levels, improve sleep, reduce pain, blood pressure, and levels of anxiety, depression, and stress. This is Johns Hopkins. That's not just me. They've studied this. So you got issues in your life? Maybe you got poison. Maybe it's unforgiveness. What does the Bible say about it? Well, it says we all need it. Romans 3:23 say, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. It's much easier to extend forgiveness to others. We consider how much mercy, how much forgiveness we've been shown in our lives. We all need it. Think about how many times you messed up. I mean, I could just sit here and let y'all think. Y'all could probably just keep going and keep going and keep going because I know I could. We mess up a lot. We mess up daily. I have to pray to the Lord, Lord, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have let my temper get the best of me. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. It happens. I have to pray. I'm sure you do too. Number 2, forgiving others is a prerequisite for our own forgiveness. Matthew 6:14-15 says, for if you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. Wow. That's strong. Think about that. Think about that. If you're holding on to a grudge, if you have bitterness and resentment in your hearts, it's time to give it over to God. Ask Him to heal you and give you the ability to forgive because your eternity depends on it. It may not be easy. It may not be something you can do on your own. A lot of times for me it hasn't been. I've got to pray, Lord, heal this situation and allow me to forgive. I need help. Number 3, lack of forgiveness breaks our fellowship with God. Matthew 5:23-24 says, so if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there. before the altar and go first. Be reconciled to your brother. Then come and offer your gift. Bible is very clear that harboring bitterness is a sin, and if we don't deal with it, it will break our fellowship with God. Don't be coming up here trying to pray and ask for stuff, and you're mad at somebody, and you holding on to something. Before, we need to forgive others even if they don't ask. We covered this in my class a couple of weeks ago. Even if they don't ask. A lot of times we're going to sit back and say, I'm mad, I'll forgive them, but they better ask. A lot of times they don't even know they've made you mad. They don't even realize they've wronged you. You sitting there holding on to something, you're all bitter inside, you getting ulcers and everything, and they just going about living their life, and they don't know. Matthew 18:15 says, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. Don't say put it on Facebook. Don't say go call all your friends and say, look, let me tell you what's going on between me and Brother Ray Jr. You know, nothing. We're good. And don't say, you know, and Pastor Ray, he dealt with this on a Wednesday night a few weeks ago, and he did an excellent job, but go to your brother in private. Say, look, this is what's happened. We need to talk. If he listens, you have gained your brother. Stephen's dying words as he was being stoned was, Lord, do not hold this sin against them. They didn't ask him for forgiveness while they were throwing the rocks. Jesus on the cross, in the midst of his executioner, says, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. He didn't wait for them to ask. He prayed for their forgiveness. He forgave at that time. When you learn to let go of past offenses, let go, right? I can get Pastor Robert up here to sing again if you want me to. He did such a good job last week. You learn to let go of these past offenses and forgive others, you will find that a great weight, a great burden has been lifted from you. The second thing I want to talk about this morning of the 5 poisons is the spirit of worry. See, this is a personal one for me. And y'all have heard me bring it up several times. I talk about it a lot because it's something I have to deal with. It's something the Lord has dealt with me over. So, what do we worry about? Well, I'll make it easier for you. What don't we worry about, okay? We worry about everything. We worry about our grades in school, our job performance, doctor's visits, deadlines, gas prices, political drama, the weather, and the list goes on and on. If it's out there, we're going to find a reason to worry about it. And I've told you guys this before. Sometimes I'll lay in bed at night and I'll just make up stuff to worry about. What if this happens, then it leads to that, then it leads to that, and then before I, you know it, I've created an entire zombie apocalypse that I'm wondering how I'm going to survive. But we will make up stuff to worry about. Over the span of a lifetime, how much time have you needlessly wasted worrying? How many hours, how many weeks of your life are wasted in worry? Here's a poem I found online and I thought was kind of cool. It says, worry is a futile thing. It's like a rocking chair. It will keep you occupied, but won't get you anywhere. So what does the Bible say about worry? Well, it says that worry accomplishes nothing. Absolutely nothing. Matthew 6:27 through 29 says, can all your worries add even a single day to your life? And why worry about your clothing? Look at the lilies of the field and how they grow. They don't work or make their clothing, yet Solomon in all his glory was not dressed as beautifully as they are. Worrying didn't help. Those are Jesus' words. It tells us that worry is not good for you. Proverbs 12:25 said that worry weighs a person down. An encouraging word cheers a person up. Worry, like unforgiveness, can make us physically sick. You ever heard the term sick with worry? It's a real thing. I've been so worried about the job before that I've been unable to eat. You can't tell it looking at me, but it's happened. It's happened. Somebody once said ulcers are not caused by what you eat, but by what is eating you. Worry is the opposite of trust in God. Philippians 4:6 says, don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. The time and energy we spend worrying can put to much better use in prayer. Live one day at a time and handle each worry as it comes through prayer. Remember this equation. Any math scholars in here? all these equations you have to remember. Here's an equation for you to remember. Worry replaced by prayer equals trust. All right? Worry replaced by prayer equals trust. The enemy likes for us to worry because it takes our focus off of God. Remember what Jesus said in Matthew 6:33. He says, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all of these things will be added unto you. He was talking about this right in the midst of his discourse about worry. He says, seek first the kingdom and his righteousness. Seek God first. Put him number one. Everything else will be taken care of. The third thing I'm going to talk about, the third poison, is a discontent spirit. How many of you have liked to play the if only game? If only. If only I had more money. If only I had a job that I really enjoyed. If only I was more talented. If only I could get the kids into a better school. And it goes on and on. Everybody here has already thought of some. Even as I started, thought, well, if only there was more time in the day. If only I had more vacations. If only my car was newer. You can think of something. He goes on and on. In Philippians 4, Paul tells the church that he has learned the secret of being content in any and every circumstance. His secret, 4:13 says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Now listen. Understand this in context. Paul was telling the church in Corinth how he was able to be content in each and every situation. He says it's through Christ who strengthens him. Now, I'm not trying to be negative here, but a lot of Christians have taken that verse to mean that Christ is their spinach and their Popeye, and they're going to get the strength like that. And they're going to spinach will go in there, and they're going to get strong. That's not what they're talking about. You're not going to just get supernatural strength for whatever task is at hand. Paul's talking about a different thing here. He's talking about contentment. When properly understood, we see that Paul can achieve contentment no matter what the circumstances because of Christ. Discontentment, like worry, is mistrusting God. You've taken your trust off of God. If you're not content, then you're saying, I don't trust what you've got for me or where you've got me at, Lord. Discontentment amounts to complaining against God's plan. Same thing there. Discontentment suggests God has made a mistake. Discontentment exalts my wisdom over God's wisdom. I know better. I know what I need. I know what I should have. Discontentment is the root of envy and jealousy. Those are things that we've got to be really careful about. There's a piece of paper here. There we go. There's an old saying called keeping up with the Joneses. Y'all heard that? Let's say your neighbor, who happens to live right across from you and is married to your cousin, I'm getting real specific here, right? Just bought him a brand new 2019 Mustang GT. And then you're like, man, I want a Mustang GT. I don't have a Mustang GT. That would be cool. And you get discontent all of a sudden with what you got because you see what he's got. Yeah, that happened recently. And I had to pray about that thing. Lord, you've blessed me. You've blessed me with a lot of things. And I'm sorry that I'm being discontent and I'm being disobedient because God's given me a wonderful home, wonderful wife, decent truck, and I'm happy. I really am. But a lot of times we'll take our eyes off of things and we'll put it on somebody else's things and say, wow, their house is bigger. They've got a pool. They've got this. They've got that. And all of a sudden we become discontent because we're trying to keep up with somebody else when maybe we're not equipped to handle what they got. They say the grass is always greener, but that's just a perception thing. May not be greener from where they're standing. Fourth thing I want to talk about this morning is a religious spirit. When I talk about religion here, I'm talking about a man-made effort that utilizes works to try and please God. Man-made. That's what I mean when I'm saying religious. So Matthew 15:8-9, Jesus is talking here. He's quoting the prophet Isaiah. He says, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are but rules taught by man. A lot of times people will quote Old Testament law to justify a particular stance on something, but we need to understand that Old Testament laws have been broken down into 3 different categories, all right? There's 3 different categories of Old Testament law, just a little bit of teaching for you. First one is the moral law. The moral law includes things like the Old Testament. Shall not steal, shall not lie, love your God. That's moral law. That's something that universal. We're under that law. The second is civil or judicial law, and that includes things like making restitution for a man who was gorged by an ox, or a man who digs a pit and rescues his neighbor's dog, things like that were civil judicial things, laws of the land, how you make restitution, how do you do this, all right? That was specific for them at that time. The third one, and the most common one that gets quoted here, is ceremonial law. Ceremonial law means, in Hebrew, hukam or chukah. Those are the words that means literally the custom of the nation. Includes laws dealing with sacrifices, ceremonial cleanliness, feasts and festivals, dietary restrictions, restrictions on clothing, and specific regulations meant to distinguish Israel from pagan neighbors. When you read the Old Testament, it talks about being ceremonially unclean. It's talking about these laws. It's talking about things like, I'm wearing 2 different types of material. That wasn't allowed under ceremonial law. It is a lot of the things, and I'm not trying to step on toes or point fingers or get anybody mad at me, I might, but like tattoos. That was part of ceremonial law. It's not something we're under. Now, if you've got a problem with tattoos, don't get one, please. Don't. But don't judge everybody else. When a young person walks into our church and they're covered in tattoos, we need to understand that God loves them just like they are. Old Testament literally means Old Covenant. Therefore, New Testament means New Covenant. We are under a new covenant. We're no longer bound by the Old Covenant. We are saved by grace under the New Covenant. If you're wondering if you have a religious spirit, here's a few things you need to look for. You judge people by their appearance. 1 Samuel 16 and 17 said God judges us by our heart, but man judges by outward appearance. It's the heart of legalism. Pastor's talked about legalism many times. He talks about how his grandmama wouldn't drink sweet tea. She thought it was wrong. You know, I grew up in an era where we're told you can't go to the movie theaters. In fact, you've got to sign this if you want to join the church. It says you're not going to go. Okay? But it was a legalistic attitude at the time. Man-made things. Number 2, you try to earn your salvations. Ephesians 2:8-9 tells us that we're saved by grace and not by our own works. We can't earn our salvation. That's something that's from a religious spirit. You're trying to earn it. You're not accepting this free gift. You're trying to earn it. Number 3, you try to conform to outward holiness without inward transformation. In other words, you're trying to look all holy. You walking around trying to look holy, but you ain't had no real change on the inside. You ain't give your life to God. And that's an easy thing to do. People can go around like the Pharisees. They tried to look holy. They tried to wear the right things. They did all this. But there was no inward transformation. Jesus rebuked those who merely attempted to cleanse the outer man without allowing God to deal with the heart. That's in Matthew 23. You're critical of other people's walk with God. Well, I don't believe he's saved because he did this or he did that or the way he does. We can't do that. Yeah, there are certain things, again, we go back to that moral law. There are certain things that if we know that somebody's cheating on his wife, well, there's a problem. You know, it needs to be confronted. If we know that somebody's, breaking one of the commandments, there's a problem. But we don't need to try to nitpick every single person and their walk with God. That's not good. Number 5, you perform Christian duty with no real hunger or passion for God. You're just doing it, but you're not passionate about it. You're doing it to be seen. And that goes right along with number 6. You desire position and honor in the church more than honor from God. I want to be up front. I want to have the title of Reverend Pastor Bishop High High King. How many titles can I add to this? Will they all fit on my name tag? You know, it's all about position. It's all about elevating yourself. It's not about God working through you or elevating you. It's about, I want to elevate myself. I want people to see me and what I can do. That's a pride thing, y'all. That's dangerous. That's dangerous. God actually, I'm going to tell you, when I first got my minister's license, this is years ago, I got an office at the church we were attending at the time, and I used to think, hey, I got family here. They're going to see my name up on the office door. It's going to be cool. And it was a pride thing. And I realized it later on. The Lord said, that's not why I've called you. It's not about this position. It's not about a title. It's not about a suit or carrying a bigger Bible than anybody else. It's about teaching my word. And that's what I try to do. I tell people all the time I'm not a preacher, I'm a teacher, and that's what I do on Wednesday nights. I teach the class. And I try to break it down, even when I'm up here doing the offering. I try to break it down into something that you can understand. Give some kind of illustration, like driving through a fog or something that says, hey, wait a minute, that makes sense. So Matthew 7:5 says that we need to first remove the beam from our own eye. Then we can see clearly enough to remove the speck out of our brother's eye. And that's the thing with so many people today, is we're so busy looking at that speck. You got a speck in your eye, Jonathan. It's about that big, but I mean, it's just driving me crazy. It's all I can see right now. It's just that speck. And meanwhile, I've got a 2x4 about the length of this, sticking right outside of my head, and don't even seem to notice that. All right? John 3:30 tells us that we need to let him increase so that we will decrease. That is the only way to get rid of a religious spirit. Let me tell you something. People with a religious spirit are easily offended. I heard somebody say, in fact, she's sitting right over there. I ain't going to call no names. But I heard somebody say one time that offense is a choice. And I got to thinking about that thing. If I get offended at somebody, it's because I've let myself get offended. But I got a question. I want to ask y'all something. I'm serious now. Real serious. This is me being serious. If I offend the same person more than once, does that make me a repeat offender? Just wondering. The last thing I want to talk to you guys about tonight is a toxic relationship. Toxic friendships. Friendship is important to everybody. It is, in fact, something we seek very early in our childhood. If we're lucky, some of those friendships may last for life. How many of you guys have friends that you've had almost all your life since childhood? I met a guy in first grade, and I was sitting on one side of the classroom, and I was drawing dinosaurs. And some students came and said, hey, he's over there, he's drawing dinosaurs too. Really? Get my pen and pad and walk over, and let's see what you're drawing. And we struck up a friendship, and we are to this day friends. And we still like dinosaurs and monster movies and superheroes and things like that, but we've been friends for years. Honestly, I can't figure that many, so I need a calculator. But friends for life. King Solomon wrote that a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. That's from Proverbs 17:17. Unfortunately, all friendships are not created equal. Some have a very positive impact on us, but others not so much. This is the difference in a true friend and one who is not. So what makes a true friend? How do you know if you have, or even if you are, a true friend? Is it possible to have a friendship that's actually hurting you or hindering you? A toxic friendship can cause a lot of damage emotionally, mentally, and even physically. Here are some things you need to look for that can describe a toxic friendship. No boundaries. If you struggle to say no, you may be the target of a toxic friendship. There are always people wanting to take advantage. They push you to do things you're uncomfortable with, even things you know are wrong. They encourage you to spend money you don't have, especially on them, or to talk about things you don't want to talk about. Selfishness. Always have to have their way. They're pushy and demanding. They're very manipulative in getting what they want, but they know how to do it. Always about their wants and never your needs. The conversation's always going to steer back to them. You might be trying to tell them something's going on in your life, but it's going to steer right back to them. What they want, what they need. They're unreliable. You ever had that friend who, hey, I need you to help me move this weekend? All right, sure, we're there. 3 weeks later, hey, can you help? No, can't do it. Unreliable. Never there when you actually need them. The conversation is always self-focused. They never listen to your problems. These friendships can leave you feeling trapped and unhappy. It's time to take action. You can't just sit back and wait for the situation to change itself. You need to recognize the problem without condemning the person. Don't just lash out. Don't just run and hide. Try to be understanding. Try to be compassionate. Try to be very careful about who and what you're allowing in your life. But try to recognize this situation. You need to take responsibility. Sometimes it's up to you to change. Casting blame might be convenient, but it's not productive. A lot of times you're treated badly because you've allowed it. You need to set healthy boundaries. You learn to say no. You need to recognize when you're getting overloaded. Set those boundaries. Stick with them. You may even have to end the relationship. You don't want to do that, but you might have to. Jesus said that if your eye keeps you from entering heaven, to pluck it out. If he was that drastic, then surely he don't mind you saying, okay, this friend is not helping my relationship with him. They're pulling me away from God. I need to pluck it out. Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And that's the kind of friend we should be looking for. True friends are what we need to be seeking out. True friends are loyal. True friendship is a healthy balance of giving and receiving. True friends don't flatter, they tell the truth. Even when it hurts. It's not always easy to hear the truth. But you'd rather hear the truth so you can work on something than to just be flat, oh, it's great, you sing like Elvis, you're awesome, you're the best singer ever. And you can't hit a note in a bucket. And then you get on American Idol 10 years later, and the judges just look at you in horror like, and you say, when I sing, people cry, and they're like, I believe it. True friends are trustworthy and reliable. True friends are loving with a love that puts others first. True friends support and encourage you. They're not bringing you down. They're there to help. They're there to lift you up. And young people that's in here this morning, I want to say something real quick. Talking about friends, and a lot of times the friends that you make when you're young are going to be some of your best friends for life. But let's kind of open this relationship up a little bit. And you're out there and you're kind of dipping your toes into the deep end of the dating pool. And you're saying, I want to find that special somebody. Don't get so caught up trying to find that special somebody that you're just going to allow yourself to be with anybody because you're scared to be alone. Don't allow yourself to compromise who you are, your moral integrity, what you stand for and what you believe to try to impress somebody of the opposite sex. The Lord has created you to be uniquely you. And he's got somebody uniquely for you. I remember I was single. I went 7 years. I didn't date anybody. 7 years. And I actually had a pastor's wife ask me, they said, are you just waiting for God to drop someone in your life? And I said, if God wants me to have somebody, he'll do that. And he did. She's here today. So we talked earlier about the poison in the stew. And 2 Kings verse 41 in that same chapter says, Elisha said, bring me some flour. Then he threw it into the pot and said, now it's all right. Go ahead and eat. And then it did not harm them. You hear the word poison and you think negative things and you think, oh no, what am I going to do? But we serve a God. We've already talked about it. We serve the chain breaker. We serve a God who's able to remove these poisons from our life. Now, I don't know where you're at. Crowd this size, there's somebody here who probably is dealing with unforgiveness. I can almost promise you there are people here who worry and spend a lot of time worrying. There's probably somebody here who's been discontent about things. Maybe you've realized that you have a little bit of a religious spirit, a holier-than-thou attitude. And maybe you think, I've got toxic friendships that I need to work on. People in my life that are bringing me down. And there's other poisons as well. There's lust. There's anger. There's rebellion. There's negativity. There's so many things that we could go on and on and on throughout the morning and talk about these things that are in our lives that are hindering our walk with God, that are hindering our spiritual growth. I can guarantee you that there's not a person in this building this morning who doesn't have something that they need to say, Lord, I give this to you. Because it's easier to sit and sing, I hear the chains falling. I hear the chains falling. And we get excited and we clap and we lift our hands. But when it comes time, these chains have gotten kind of comfortable. I'm used to them. I'm afraid to ask for help. I like who I am. I don't want to change. I don't want to give up my anger. I don't want to have to forgive this person. I don't want to stop worrying all the time. It's what I do in my spare time. So many things. Think about your own life. He's going to play, and I'm going to open these altars for anybody and everybody that wants to hear some chains falling this morning. He's a chain breaker. If you want chains broken in your life, please come and give it to God. If you're content where you are, I just pray He'll bless you anyway.